talk some Detroit Lions football on the Our Lads Football Network. And you know what that means. Anytime we talk about the Detroit Lions, fastly becoming one of our favorite pet teams here on the network. Of course, I have my own favorite team, but it's always fun, Jeff, to follow. We've been saying this every time we meet up, especially for the new season. It's just nice to follow a team on the rise.
It's nice to have some positive excitement going into training camp and into a season because we don't get that all the time in Detroit, as you well know.
Yeah. So, and yeah, there's just nothing going on, which is always a good thing. You know, no major injury news. Of course, the Williams suspension is hopefully old news at this point. And he's out, what, 6 games, Jeff?
6 games, and It is what it is. You know, he not only can he not appeal, he also indicated that he wouldn't if he could. So, you know, that you got 6 games without one of your premier weapons on offense. But other than that, it's been a very quiet off. So we talked about a little bit off air. No injuries, no holdouts. The entire rookie class signed before camp started. Like, there's no real drama going on.
Yeah.
It's kind of nice when you look around the league and you see, what's going on in various places. The running backs up in arms all around the league. Pass rushers, guys trying to parlay their Madden ratings into bigger contracts. Like, none of that's going on in Detroit. I like that.
Yeah, that's silly. But yeah, the running back. Well, look, the veteran pass rushers, they're all going to get signed. They all will.
Yes.
Somebody they know what they're doing. They don't want to participate in camp, as at their age. And then running backs, I think this is going to be I don't think we're going to see this again. I think this is going to be they're going to fix this, because I think another year, because we're starting to go back to the running game meaning something in the NFL. So one more full season, which we all believe will bring the running game back, I think will solidify that. Come on, enough of this nonsense. You can't just, especially if you start seeing other teams not have success. Like, for instance, the Giants situation. I mean, I know they're getting better with talent and so forth this year than last year, but Barkley, as I was going over with this with Ryan Dunleavy a few days ago, I mean, he is just he's their guy. He's the only guy they have on the team that does anything offensively, and they're not going to give this guy a long-term deal, this running, and that's just ridiculous.
I'll go back to last year when they played the Lions. The Lions held him to 22 yards on 15 carries. That's the reason the Lions won that football game. Not that Daniel Jones didn't play well. It's that they stopped Saquon Barkley and made Daniel Jones try to beat them. And guess what? He couldn't. They're not the only team to figure that out either. Now, not every team can hold Saquon Barkley to 22 yards on 15 carries, but that's one of the reasons why we're excited about the Lions is the fact that they were able to do that and do that sort of thing. I think you hit it on the head there, Greg. It's cyclical. You're going to see more teams as right now we're wide receiver happy and, spread offense a little bit, 3 wides, a tight end in the slot. How do you beat that? Well, you get a big guy and you run him between the tackles.
Yes.
And hit the light box.
Yes.
That's football. You know this. You've been around a long time like I have. It all cycles through. That's where the 3-4 defense came from initially. That's where the run-stuffing nose tackles came from. The Ted Washingtons and Vince Wilforks of the world got increased value because they suddenly could stop those big running backs that were going through. It's going to cycle back. And in 2 or 3 years, we're going to be wondering, how come the wide receivers aren't getting paid anymore? Why are the running backs starting to get paid again? You just gotta cycle through it. Unfortunately for a guy like Saquon, he's at the wrong part of his contract cycle, at the wrong part of the running back cycle. And that's unfortunately that's life.
As long as he stays healthy, he's still young enough that even if he gets tagged and signs another, say he's there 2 years and then leaves, there'll still be one team that will be smart enough and have the money to give him what he wants. It'll happen. He's just too good of a player that if he plays 2 more full seasons of electrifying football, somebody's going to give him a big contract. So
Could be Detroit. You never know.
You never
That's
know.
when David Montgomery's up.
Yes, and it all depends, obviously, too, on how your boy Gibbs does. We talked all about that. We'll have a link in the description of our conversation, and at the very least, at the end of the show, we'll give you the opportunity to click the draft talk that we had, because that was definitely something that if you're a Detroit Lions fan, you want to check out. But yeah, let's take a look at its training camp. And by the way, anybody that was being patient with us for the first 5 minutes talking just basically NFL, Jeff's going to be a part of our OFN Insiders show. We're going to put that together. We've been promising that. We're going to have some of our top analysts get together. Even if we have to only have, say, 2, 3, 4 at a time, I shouldn't say only, but it's going to be a lot of fun, and we're going to talk NFL. So, like, if Jeff comes on, sure, he'll talk a little bit about Detroit, but for the most part, he's going to add his insight on what's going on around the league, and I think it's going to be a lot of fun, so I'm looking forward to that. Obviously, we'll let everybody know when that comes about, but let's talk Detroit Lions football. Let's go into, and I'm going to pop up the depth chart here at our lads, and we'll start on offense. And the offensive line, this is the one part of the team that there really is nothing to worry about. And it's just about staying healthy. So what is when you're looking at the roster and who's going to make the team, is that, and we're zeroing in first on the offensive line, who's battling for that final for that final spot or two?
The 5th round rookie Colby Sorsdahl is in that mix. Logan Stenberg is probably on his last of 9 lives in Detroit.
Okay.
And just hasn't worked for Logan. He continues to have the problems that he had at Kentucky, that he's overly aggressive, and that both gets him penalties and out of position way too often. As far as, I think Ross Pierschbacher is very set as the backup center. And that's something that's important because Frank Ragnow will not practice much, if at all, this year with his toe injury. He's going to play he'll be fine. But practices are different, and they need somebody who can snap the ball. And that appears to be Pierschbacher's role, so he should be safe. Matt Nelson, for better or for worse, will be the backup tackle. I'm curious as to how some of the rookies will fare into that, but they're on the outside looking in. But a guy like Awosika, is he going to make it in? Graham Glasgow, what does he have left?
Yeah.
Because I'll tell you what, if you watched him in Denver last year, it wasn't good. Ever since he had that leg injury against Dallas, he's not been the same. Now, the Lions invested fairly heavily in him to replace Evan Brown as like the de facto top interior reserve. We'll see if that happens. My fingers are crossed that it will work out for him, but I'm not depending on that. So a guy like Awosika or Stenberg or even Sorsdahl, it appears they're moving him into guard. We'll see more on that. In minicamp, he spent most of the time at guard, but he did get some tackle reps too. So we'll see on that. But that's the starting 5 set, and that's what we're happy about in Detroit right now.
Okay, so Pierschbacher is the number 2 center, and Glasgow, like you said, more than likely, he's going to be the number 1 guard off the bench. Do you think that it was more of the injury, or because sometimes this happens, you leave one franchise, go to another, different staff, different schemes and such. So what do you look at there? Do you think what's your best guess on why Glasgow just didn't work out in Denver? Because obviously Detroit feels good about bringing him back. So maybe they feel it was, who knows, maybe change of scenery back to Detroit will do him good.
Yeah, and I think some of it is the fact that he had to block for a mobile quarterback, and he's never had to do that before. And that does change your perspective. It changes your timing up front. When you're blocking for Russell Wilson, that's very different than pass protecting for Matthew Stafford, like what he did back in the day here. Yeah. And for Jared Goff too. Jared Goff is not a guy who's going to run much.
No.
There's certainly not going to be, Russell Wilson for all his glory, he still has those plays where he just runs aimlessly around in the back. and like, if you're an offensive lineman, what do? You're either going to hold or you're going to get beat. Like one or the other, you got to let go at some point. And I think that impacted him. I'm very curious as to how he's going to perform. We have a fantastic offensive line coach in Detroit in Hank Fraley. He's one of the best. And not only is he's a great teacher, he's also a great tactician. And I think that he will help Glasgow get back to being the best Graham Glasgow that he can be. But that injury, you cannot watch before and after and not notice a difference.
Okay.
And hopefully another year out from the injury does wonders for him. Look, mini camp he looked okay, but again, they're not tackling, they're not going full bore, they're not in full pads. He is one of the guys that I am definitely watching during minicamp to see where he's at, because if not, they might need to be in the market to get somebody else. Not that there's many out there right now, but that is a position that does raise my blood pressure just a little bit going into camp.
So if we're thinking about, teams usually keep like what, 9, maybe 10 linemen.
Yeah.
So let's say Glasgow's healthy. Let's say it's Glasgow. You would think Sorsdahl will make the team. And you got Piers Bacher.
Yes.
And you've got Matt Nelson, correct? I mean, are those 4 guys pretty much set? And if that's the case, then that means you mentioned Stenberg, Awosika. How is it? Awosika?
Awosika.
Yeah. And then Eze, we haven't talked about, or Fetty. So all those guys are battling basically for one spot, more than likely.
Right. And Ifedi is interesting because they did bring him in, and they don't really have that veteran presence other than Glasgow as a backup. I mean, I know Matt Nelson's been around a while, but he's only ever been in Detroit. And sometimes you want to have a guy that comes in from the outside and gives you a fresh perspective and just different things. And he can play. He can line up at any guard or tackle spot. I'm not sure he can play, but he can line up in those spots anyways.
What do you want? I mean, as a fan, you want to see someone like Eze take a next step, or even
that would be fantastic.
Awosika.
But he just hasn't shown that in the first couple. His rookie training camp was not great, and from what we've seen, he's got a lot of work to do to make the team. He could probably stick around in the practice squad
again.
Yeah, and they do have. They've got some options there, but it seems fairly set. If Eddie could conceivably get in, and Awosika could take a jump. He's another guy. He came from the Eagles. Can play right tackle, right guard, left guard. He'll be given a chance to prove himself in a shot.
Okay.
Anyways.
And again, we talked about some of these players too that are going to be battling for those last playoff spots. I mean, those last roster spots on our draft recap show, so you can check that out, including like Connor Galvin, the free agent who had a really good college career, but surprisingly at the end of it just kind of tailed off and was not even drafted. Okay, so
you have to bring up Brad Cecil as potential center. He has gotten some pretty good buzz from the line coaches, and fellow linemen. So he's an undrafted rookie from Kentucky. He's clearly third on the depth chart, but he should at least stick around and make the practice squad.
Okay. Then the skill positions, starting at wide receiver. So things look at least the top 5. Well, I shouldn't say that, but I'm going to say that. Do you after the top 3, Brown, Reynolds, and Jones, you got Raymond at 4. I would think Antoine Green's going to find a way to make this team if he looks the part. So not. So everybody else is battling for one more spot. Plus Green, he's got to definitely show up. But who should we be keeping an eye on there?
Tom Kennedy. You cannot bring up the Lions summer without Tom Kennedy because he does it every summer. You write him off going in, and he sticks around. Look, he's a gamer. I think that's the cliche. He does show that he can contribute on special teams. He can do gadget plays. He's tough as nails, blocks well out of the slot. That's something that the Lions do actually look for. So he's certainly someone that you can't write him off, obviously. But he's probably the top of the list to get in that next group. Antoine Green is going to have to earn it on special teams. His wide receivers coach, Antoine Randall, has said as much. We're going to see what he can do. Remember, one of the things that is open with this team, the return gigs are open. The primary kick returner last year was Justin Jackson. He's not back. Khalif Raymond will be the punt returner, we think. But kick return is wide open. And Antoine Green has all the attributes of being a special return man. We just haven't seen him do it. Dylan Drummond is another guy, undrafted rookie from Eastern Michigan. He's got a shot. He looked very good catching passes and getting himself free, especially working across the middle and sort of zone busting in minicamp. So we'll see if he can keep that up too.
Okay. Now we move on over to the running back position, and we talked about how stocked this position was. Montgomery and Gibbs. So that's your top two. It's going to be
That's
a
your
very
two.
good top
Yeah.
two. So, are there any other locks? Is Reynolds a lock?
I'd like to think so, but I don't think he is.
Okay.
And I think the reserves here, look, you're looking at maybe 30 carries, 35 carries on the season, maybe 10 targets in the passing game. This is special teams. And that's where Craig Reynolds and Jamar Jefferson, undrafted rookie Mohamed Ibrahim are going to have to come in. Now, Ibrahim has a chance to make himself as a short yardage specialist. We've kind of pegged Craig Reynolds as that, and that's not really what he does special. So if Ibrahim can convince himself to be the guy who's comes in on 3rd and 1 and can get the first down, I think he's got a pretty good chance of sticking. And then there's Greg Bell, who was injured as his rookie season. He's a big dude, and he looked very comfortable catching passes and in pass protection in minicamp. So you can't write him off either. Reynolds clearly has the lead, but it's not a lock by any means.
Does do they keep a fullback?
They do, Jason Kabinda. Now it's interesting, and we've actually done a little data mining on this, and it's something that's going to publish at Lions Wire later. They actually run the ball better in like neutral run situations without him than with him, and they have a lot of tight ends too, which we're going to get to.
Yes.
So I don't know if they would do it, but I understand why they would get rid of Jason Kabinda if they do. Again, I don't think that's going to happen, but from a football standpoint, it kind of does make sense. But Kabinda, he was our Walter Payton Man of the Year nominee. He's a fantastic leader in the locker room. If you watched Hard Knocks last year, you saw him with the intense face. The coaches love him. The players love him. Is that enough to keep him around, even though he doesn't really do anything for the offense? I kind of think it does. But
it helps. Yes, that is very important. And especially this type of locker room that they put together.
Yeah.
That's an important part. So, yeah, we'll keep an eye on that for sure. All right, so, tight end. So, Laporta's the dude now. He's the big dude, and they're going to expect big things from him. But, it's like Wright, Mitchell, I don't know about Zylstra. That's your department, obviously. And then Deese, we've talked about Deese and his potential future. So, how do you think it shapes up as far as the future of those four? First, let's start with the future. Who do you think? Give me a ranking, top 2 or 3 out of that foursome.
Yeah. So my head going into camp is that Laporta will be number 1, Mitchell will be number 2, getting a full offseason of health. Remember last year, 5th round rookie out of Virginia Tech.
Yes.
He missed all of last summer. Recovering from a knee injury that he suffered in his last game for the Hokies. So he's also the guy who can line up in line the best.
Okay.
Brock Wright is more of a jack of all trades. And it's interesting because Laporta is basically a receiving specialist. We actually saw him line up as a wide receiver in camp, in mini camp at times. So he's going to catch a lot of passes, but I'm not sure you want him blocking.
No.
James Mitchell is more of the inline presence. Now he's got to work on his blocking. He's got to work on his pad level of technique, but he's got the size and stature and strength to make that happen more than Brock Wright or Shane Zylstra does. So I think what happens with Wright's going to be very interesting because Shane Zylstra is a better receiver than him. And what we saw earlier this summer, Zylstra was really good in red zone drills. Better than Wright was. So how does Wright fit? Because he's the guy that can sort of do all those roles, but maybe not as well as anybody else. That's going to be one that we're going to have to see that one play out because I don't know how that's going to go. And Deese, unfortunate circumstance that he missed rookie season. He's come back. He's got a shot. He really does. He's got the physical attributes. He's got some background. He has a pedigree. Obviously, his dad played in the NFL for a long time. Not as a tight end, as a tackle, but there's something to work with there too. So that's going to be another one where we're watching to see. And I will say this, whichever of the 2 or 3 that don't make it, they're going to be playing somewhere else this year.
Agreed. And that's why it's going to be a very interesting. So your prediction?
I'm going to say that Wright winds up sticking as the number 3, and as long as they keep Kabinda, that's going to be all that they keep.
Okay. And then Zylstra and Deese will maybe make the practice squad or be picked up. And unless Kabinda does not make the team and one of those guys sticks. Okay.
Yeah, and I could see them. Well, I really don't see them getting rid of Kabinda, but if they do, I think that's where Wright fills that sort of role as like the H-back type thing.
Okay.
And then it's between Deese and Zylstra. Do they want a guy who's more well-rounded, or do they want a guy who's a receiving specialist? And that's a question for the coaches that I can't answer.
Okay. And then, of course, quarterback. Nothing really to talk about here. We all know what's going on.
About the only drama is if Hendon Hooker opens on the active roster or the NFI list, which would mean he would miss the first 4 weeks, and we don't know that one yet. I sort of expect him to open on the NFI list, and Nate Sudfeld is your backup quarterback, and then they decide what to do there once Hooker is ready to go. They're certainly not rushing Hendon Hooker. They have more confidence in Nate Sudfeld than I think most Lions fans would like to believe, but that's that he earned it, because when he came here after roster cutdowns last year, remember the Lions at the end of training camp last year cut both Tim Boyle and David Blau as their backups, so they only had one quarterback on the roster. So Sudfeld earned their trust pretty quickly on that, and that's not something that they're gonna overlook. But if Hooker's ready, and he could be, I could see a world where they don't keep Sudfeld and they do one of those things where he's not going to go anywhere else as a backup quarterback. So you slide, you cut him, and then you bring him back after all the roster shakeouts. So I think that's something that they could do as well.
And I do the new rule, that the new quarterback rule, which makes a whole lot of sense. I don't know why they had to wait to make this decision. I mean, it completely was not benefiting the NFL offense, everything is supposed to be about. And maybe what happened was the San Francisco playoff game was the one that just tipped it. And they were like, this is ridiculous. We can't do this.
Yeah, so, makes sense. I mean, I'm glad that they've returned to normalcy on that. All
right, defense. So we'll start on the line. Kaminsky, McNeil. That's a really good 2 out of 3. So the question is in the interior, and there's going to be a big camp for the rookie, Broderick Martin, because they would really like him by the end of the season to be the starter, wouldn't they?
Absolutely. No question about it. He's massive. He's got the giant wingspan. He's proven that he's willing to learn, and I think that's something that this team does a really good job. The scouting department and GM Brad Holmes deserve credit for finding guys who have a willingness to improve. That they're not going to I'm a 3rd round pick, I got this. There's not going to be any complacency with Broderick Martin. That's very clear. Isaiah Buggs will probably start there as the nose tackle to start the year, anyways. He had a nice season, nothing great, but was better than Pittsburgh fans ever thought he could be. In his years with the Steelers, it just didn't work out for Isaiah. I think he responded well to the coaching as well. Now, they do have a different defensive line coach this year. Todd Wash is now in Carolina, and they brought in Penn State's old coach, and I can't think of his name. It's right in front of my face, and I can't see it. But anyways, it's going to be interesting to see how Buggs works with the new coaching staff, because he's also going to be asked to bring along Martin as well. And not every player is amenable to grooming their potential and eventual successor. And we don't know that about Isaiah Buggs. It seems like he would be that sort of guy, but you never know. And then there's options there. They got a couple of undrafted rookies in Corey Durden, who I thought looked pretty good. Chris Smith, coming out of Notre Dame, has some big body anyways. They've got some potential. Benito Jones is back. And then, like you said, John Kaminsky can play inside. He can play outside. If the Lions do what I think they're going to do, and I have to put this in, I think they're going to do this, they're going to see more 5-man line where they have 3 interior linemen and 2 defensive end / edge / outside linebackers, and that positions will rotate and fluctuate based on the matchups. But I think Kaminsky is one of the guys who will be on the outside of that 3-man interior when they do that. And they did show that in minicamp, and it is something that the coaches have talked about doing more of because it really fits what Aiden Hutchinson does well, and Josh Paschal, who can also be like the other anchor side on that. He's a power-based edge player. You can move him inside and get some juice out of that too. So we got to bring up Christian Covington too, because he took all the first team reps in minicamp. That can't be overlooked.
Yeah. So you're looking at Kaminsky, Buggs, McNeil, Martin, Paschal, Covington. Yeah. That's 6. So would those be like the 6 locks?
I wouldn't count on Christian Covington being a lock.
Okay.
Just because he's got to prove it, but he is in fact the oldest guy on the team, so that does mean something. Well, Marvin Jones is older on offense, but on defense they don't trust anybody over 30. Well, he's the only one.
Okay. So 5 locks. And then it's Covington, Jones, and then the rookies.
And I think both the undrafted rookies are fighting for the same practice squad spot. And Covington is a guy that if it doesn't work out for him here, he can go somewhere else and latch on pretty quickly. He's been around a lot. He knows what's up.
And then Levi.
Who knows? I don't expect him to play again. And I am not the only person in the Lions media sphere that shares that opinion. This guy had back surgery. And while we haven't heard exact nature of the back surgery, this is an injury that dates back to 2018. He got one good year at Washington out of it and one okay, mediocre rookie year with the Lions out of it. So he's played 2 years of football in 5 years with chronic back problem around it. I mean, even if he does come back and play, what are you going to get out of that?
Yeah.
Like, his development has been so stunted by this that I am of the belief that he's going to wind up getting an injury settlement and retiring out of it. That's just my belief. I don't have any inside information on that. That's what I think. But it's tough to count on him to do anything more than that, quite frankly.
Yeah, we'll see how that goes. It's unfortunate, but that's the sport. And then
it is.
At edge, of course, Hutchinson you mentioned, because we'll see him really on the line a lot. And then you've got Houston on the outside as well. And then you've got the Aquara brothers and Charles Harris. So there's a lot there, but those guys are making the team, right? Even the Aquaras, is there an issue there potentially?
There's just, so this goes back to the roster management. Are they keeping an extra tight end? How many running backs do they keep? How many wide receivers do they keep? Because if they go heavier on those positions where they don't have as much depth, there's not room for both the Aquara brothers and James Houston and Josh Paschal.
Well, we know James Houston's not going anywhere. So
and Aiden Hutchinson, and James Houston. So there's Charles, I will say this, of the 3 veterans, the Aquara brothers and Charles Harris is the most likely to be a lock to make it. The coaches love him. He got first team reps whenever he wanted reps in minicamp. He is poised to bounce back from an off season that got ended off season. He didn't have an off season. He had an off season of play on the field before he got hurt last year. He was very good the year before that in his first year in Detroit, and the coaches are expecting him to get back to that level, and I kind of am too. So this is another one. I can see one of the Aquaras, if not both of them, getting traded during camp or at the end of roster cut down, something like that, where somebody gets hurt in Tampa Bay as an edge, and we need somebody who can fill in cheaply. Hey, 6th-round conditional draft pick in 2025, sure. Have Julian Okwara.
Yeah,
I think that's more likely to happen than not, quite frankly.
Who do you think? So who has the most value between the 2 brothers? Julian?
Romeo does.
Does.
Because he has more positional versatility. He can play down. He can play a hand in the dirt. If you ask Julian Okwara to put a hand in the dirt, he's going to get blasted.
Okay.
And he also just has not developed at all, really, as a guy who can drop as an off-ball linebacker, which is something that they're working with both Hutchinson and James Houston, is working on having. Look, they're not going to do it much. Their primary role is obviously rushing the passer, but if you can drop into coverage and be comfortable in space, that gives you that much more value. And thus far, we have not seen that from Julian Okora. So
Okay.
I kind of think he's the most likely of that group to go.
Romeo's been more banged up, though, correct?
Yes, he
Yeah.
has. Both of them have had their fair share of
Yeah.
injuries. And Romeo is coming off of a torn Achilles. To his credit, he did get back late last season, and that shows something. That shows that he really did try. Because look, it's a different deal tearing your Achilles when you're a 200-pound wide receiver, and when you're a 285-pound, 290-pound edge defensive lineman.
Yeah.
The fact that he got back from that at all was pretty impressive. And he's another guy beloved in the locker room and a veteran presence who has played elsewhere. Remember, he played for the Giants for a bit.
Yes.
The most of this team is homegrown, and I have heard from a couple of different coaches express that we kind of need the outside voices and experience just a little bit to bring up, to maybe push back against us with what we're saying, or to validate, like, hey, a rookie comes up and like, is this what they did elsewhere? You've played other places. Christian Covington has that value too, playing at the Chargers and Texans. Like, was it like this? Down there. And that there is value in that.
Yes.
And I love that the Lions coaching staff is confident enough and self-aware enough to see that and embrace it. That to me, that's a major asset for Dan Campbell, and one of the reasons why I think he's a fantastic head coach.
And then inside at linebacker, the big draft pick, Jack Campbell. Of course, Anzalone's back. Malcolm Rodriguez is there. So we've got Anzalone, Campbell, Rodriguez, Barnes. Those are your 4 locks, correct?
Yeah. Yes.
And then who's battling for that final spot, or will there be? How many inside linebackers do you think they're going to keep?
So that 5th linebacker spot, if they keep one, is special teams, and that's Anthony Pittman. That is undrafted rookie. Yeah, Jalen Reeves-Maybin is back. He will compete for that. That's something that he did do well in Houston. Did not play defense well at all for the Texans.
Yeah.
And Texans fans will let you know that too. But don't sleep on Trevor Nowaski, and this is something I'm actually preparing to go more in depth in. Undrafted rookie from Saginaw Valley State. He has incredible athleticism, very similar to Jack Campbell. And he also has the ability to rush the passer a little bit as a stand-up edge on the side. I think he's got, of all those guys, he's got the best chance to stick as a special teams ace and make a name for himself. So he's
okay.
Like, I would say that Reeves-Maybin probably has the top track to it, but it's not sold that he's going to get that. So
he's sort of like the also, veteran in case, but there's the young guy that, hey, we want him to make the team, but if something happens, he's not ready. We got the veteran.
Yeah, and Nowaski, it's big training camp for him because if he tackles as well as he moved in minicamp, it's going to be real hard to cut that guy.
Yeah, I doubt it. Yeah, knowing the coaching staff, they're not going to let a guy like that go. So
yeah, Kelvin Shepard has expressed a lot of satisfaction with Trevor Nowaski. The Kelvin Shepard being the linebackers coach and rising coaching star among many rising coaching stars in the Lions defense. He might be the brightest shiner, and I wish we could bottle and show people around the country how good he is coaching in from training camp, because it's fun to watch. Like, normally the linebackers are not the sizzle position to watch because there isn't a lot of tackling that goes on or anything. Just watching Kelvin Shepard guide those guys, it's fun.
That's the thing that you like about going there. That's the thing, it's not about necessarily plays, let's see the passing plays or the running plays, but everything else that goes on that you don't get a chance to see and hear and just feel on television. So
absolutely,
if you've never been to training camp, that's why you go. Okay, then we take a look at the secondary, and there's still, as we talked about a month or so ago, it's in flux without a doubt, and but it looks a lot better than we've seen it in years, but it's on paper. All the pieces have to fit. So who are the locks right now? Because usually secondary, you're going to keep 9 to 10 guys, usually 10, sometimes even 11, depending on special teams, but 10's usually a good number. And there's a couple of good rookie free agents that we talked about as well that are going to have a
Yeah,
case. Joseph and
absolutely.
Starling Thomas. So who are the
Yeah.
locks?
So outside corners, there's three locks: Cam Sutton, Jerry Jacobs, and Emmanuel Mosley. Now Mosley might begin the season on, I guess it would be NFI because he got hurt while he was a member of the 49ers. He tore up his knee last year. I will say, just from my personal observances in minicamp, he was not as close to playing as what Hendon Hooker is,
Okay.
even though he had
Wow.
his injury earlier on. So that's one where he might wind up making the roster and be put on injured reserve right away too.
Interesting.
One of those deals.
Okay. Important.
And with the more liberal injured reserve return rules, that's something that could happen. But so then you go. CJ Gardner Johnson, Brian Branch are going to be the slot slash safeties. Like they play all over. You have to call them both defensive backs rather than a safety, but their primary roles will be either strong safety or playing in the slot. And then you got Tracy Walker coming back. You got Kirby Joseph, who was a fantastic playmaker as a rookie. We're expecting some growth there. So there's seven right there.
7.
I think that's 7. Yeah.
Yep, 7. And now you've got Will Harris.
Will Harris is going to be very tough to kick out because he can play literally any position in a depth role. And I've said this before, I do not like Will Harris as a starter, but if he is your fourth safety, fifth corner, you got a pretty good secondary.
Okay.
And I think he's going to fit. And he's another guy that, special teams are going to help, but that's a leader. That's a locker room presence, a trusted guy, a conduit between the coaching staff and the rest of the players. Remember, this is a very young group with a lot of newcomers coming in. We talked about Gardner Johnson, Sutton, and Mosley. Those are all new guys coming in. Having a guy like Will Harris to be able to coalesce around, I think, is important. So,
okay.
He might not necessarily be the most worthy, and Lions fans probably don't like me talking nice about him, but he's earned that spot. He really has.
What about Savion Smith?
So he is moving to safety, and I will tell you that special teams are his ticket, and he also has potential to be a return option. We saw him fielding punts and kicks a little bit in training camp, so he's one. Then you brought up Brandon Joseph. You brought up Starling Thomas. I think Thomas has the best chance of any undrafted rookie on this team to make the roster. There are warts on him. I think he's 24 going on 25 soon. Has a couple of ACLs in his past, but man, watching him run stride for stride with Jamison Williams on a fly route in training in minicamp was illuminating to me. Because I watched him at UAB, I saw what he could do. I thought, okay, if he learns situational awareness, if he learns to identify when the ball's in the air, this guy can be something. And he's certainly got the physical attributes to do it. And another guy who could return kicks, and that's feather in his cap. So that you're looking there. Brady Breeze, not going to be an easy guy to cut. He's stuck around. He's much more of a strong safety, but also a special teams guy, and knows that he needs to make his bread buttered on special teams. So tough to get rid of those guys.
And Chase Lucas too, right?
Chase Lucas has to show a lot more than he did as a rookie. Again, another overaged guy. So Jerry Jacobs is going into his third NFL season. Chase Lucas is going into his second. Chase Lucas is 2.5 years older than Jerry Jacobs.
Yeah.
Which is crazy.
Well, he better take advantage of that now. That's for sure. Because the longer it goes, the worse it gets. And then how about Melifonwu? What's the deal there with him? You think that's it for him?
He's got to show that he's got a position. Because right now they've tried him at outside corner. They've tried him at slot. They've tried him as a hybrid safety linebacker. They've tried him as a free safety. And thus far, he's never been one of the 3 best at any of those spots. He looked decent in minicamp, better than I'd seen him in terms of understanding the defensive concepts. So you can't write him off, but right now he looks like a guy that isn't going to make it unless he has a really good training camp.
Okay, well, that's why we're going to definitely zero in on those final 3 or 4 spots. So
Yeah.
lot up for grabs there.
And some of the dynamic here is, do you keep a guy who's in the final year of his rookie contract that hasn't really panned out for you, or do you give it to an undrafted guy who
Yes.
offers more long term
Yeah.
and does it cheaper? By the way, that's
Usually,
that
yeah.
factors into it too.
I think we usually we can pretty much guess what the answer to that is. That's the game. All right, and then
It is.
special teams. You mentioned that's going to be another interesting part. Is the return game wide open?
Return. Again, Caleb Raymond will probably be the punt returner as he was last year. He's good at it. They like him there. They trust him. The other return job, wide open. And that's where Antoine Green could step up. That's where Craig Reynolds could he's gotten some shots at. Jermar Jefferson. This is where the bottom of the running back and cornerback and maybe even safety or wide receiver will come into play. And it could be a deciding factor on the 53rd man on the roster.
Absolutely.
And it's a battle royale. And right now, Greg, your guess is as good as mine.
You know, if you're one of those guys that gets the opportunity, it's scrimmage, it's preseason, take it to the house.
Absolutely. And that's what the Lions have 2 joint practices here. They're joint practicing with the Giants and the Jaguars. And you better believe the special teams are going to be a big part of that.
And then, of course, the kicking game, though, Fox, he's
Jack
back.
Fox is great as your punter.
Yes.
Great. He's the only specialist who is a lock.
Yes.
Because they have 2 long snappers and they have 3 kickers. Long snapper,
that's interesting.
Look, I've been doing this a long time. I've scouted the NFL for 20 drafts. Long snapper is it's so fickle. So whether they keep Scott Daly for another year or they go with Jake McQuaid, I don't know what they're going to do there. And I don't know. Honestly, I can't, from a layman's perspective, I can't tell a lot of difference. Now, they do have Don Muehlbach, who was the long snapper in Detroit for 18 years, is the guy who's going to make the decision. So I'm going to trust in Mule there.
Yeah, that's the thing, as you mentioned, 18 years. But I mean, when you win that position, and as long as you do a good job, you don't screw anything up.
Yeah.
Penalties they could live with. Don't screw up with the snaps, all that kind of stuff. You can be in the league a long time and on that same team for a long time, because that's just a position that once they find somebody, they don't want to mess with that. Okay, great, we've got someone. Hopefully, you're our guy for the next 20 years. That's how they look at it. So
absolutely, and maybe McQuaid is older. Daly is a little bit younger on that front.
Okay.
So maybe that I don't know. I don't know what they're gonna do there. That's
did they have a long-term guy last year that left, or has that been in flux the last few years?
So Muehlbach retired before last season. They brought Scott Daly in, and to be honest, Daly had won the role anyways. Muehlbach just. If you watch them when they actually had to go down and cover, he just didn't have the giddy up to get down the field much anymore. And Daly had a little bit more of that. Daly did have a few, I don't want to call them bad snaps, but they weren't perfect. And I think that's why McQuaid is in to see who might be more perfect at it. And then you got 3 kickers, and I've said it a couple times now on various outlets. Michael Badgley was the only kicker that wasn't in minicamp, and he won minicamp by not being there and letting the other 2 guys kick.
Wow,
that's not a good situation.
So Patterson,
I like the money badger. I think he's going to be fine, but you got to keep in mind, Detroit. We have really high standards for kickers because we went from Eddie Murray to Jason Hanson to Matt Prater, and other than the 1.5 seasons between the end of Hanson and the beginning of Prater, the kicking's been phenomenal for almost 40 years, over 40 years in Detroit. Eddie Murray came in 1980, I want to say. So there's a standard there, and fans care about the kicker in Detroit more than most places. And look, Badgley was fine last year. He doesn't have a huge leg, but he's accurate enough on what they want to do. And we got to bring this up again. One of the reasons that Dan Campbell is successful as a head coach is that if it's a choice between kicking a 52-yard field goal or going for it on 4th and 2, he's going for it.
Yeah.
So they're not necessarily in the mood to kick a lot of 57-yard, 55-yard field goals. You make everything inside of 45, you're good. And that's where it's a battle between Badgley and Riley Patterson, who they traded largely inconsequential pick to Jacksonville for. And John Parker Romo, who came from the XFL and who has a massive leg, but sprays it all over the place. You never know where it's going. And it's one of those, like, one time he's going to kick a banana ball, another time he's going to kick a line drive, another time he's kicking a knuckleball. Some of them are going to be high. Some are going to, like, there's no rhyme or reason how it goes.
Yeah.
No. So it's unfortunate because he's a great story. And Greg, I'm a sucker for the alternate sports leagues like that, but he's got to do a little bit better in training camp than mini camp. Otherwise, he's not going to be in training camp long.
And I don't know if there's any free agents still available. I don't know what the status is on that as far as...
I think they're going to be okay finding out. Like, Riley Patterson did not have a good mini camp, but this is a guy, you remember, the last time we saw him kick, he kicked a game-winning field goal for the Jaguars in a playoff game over the Chargers. So he does have that. Now, he did legitimately lose the kicking competition a year ago in Detroit. He was here before that, finished the 2021 season as the kicker. 2022 offseason, he definitively got beat by Austin Seibert, who then got hurt, and Patterson was gone by then. I tell you, every kick was a little close to the one of the uprights in minicamp for Patterson. That concerns me a little bit. But in terms of short range accuracy, he's probably the best in the camp.
Well, that'll be another interesting, and they're always usually on the other side of the.
Yeah, so Detroit has two fields, and we expect them to be at the far end of that one field that's over here, out of sight, out of mind.
It's
not as bad as Cleveland, where they have four fields and the kickers are on the fourth field, which you physically cannot get to unless you cross the third field during.
Oh yeah, that ain't going to be any good. No,
they'll
arrest you for that. Can you as a fan, can you make it over there?
You can actually. That's where the fans sit.
The
fans get to watch the kickers, and they don't get to watch the offense so much.
Oh, okay.
Both in Detroit and Cleveland.
Okay. All right, Jeff. Appreciate it as always. So we will talk to you for sure at some point, either just before the season begins to talk Lions football or right around. And of course, we'll definitely be talking to you, much shorter interviews during the season. As I said, definitely looking forward to talking to you on our OFN Insiders show. That'll be coming up sometime in the next several weeks. So we'll let everybody know when that takes place. And Jeff, you've got the YouTube channel, the Detroit Lions podcast. So are you on every day?
No, we do once a week.
Oh, just once a week. Okay.
Yep. So I'm actually recording a mailbag as soon as we're done with this. So that'll be up there soon.
When is that? When does it record?
I'm going to record it literally as soon as we're done here. So it should be up by, it'll probably get posted tomorrow. My partner, my co-host Chris, is on vacation this week. So we're not having a live show this week. So I'm supplementing with a mailbag and a couple of quick short videos that'll be up interspersed. So sort of on his schedule because he doesn't let me touch the buttons to process things.
Yeah, probably smart. All right, Jeff. Thanks a lot. We'll talk to you real soon. Enjoy camp.
Thanks.